Once upon a time, right here in the West, I had the strange and surreal experience with friends of walking through a burnt-out forest. Now, this was inside a national park boundary, and the part that sticks with me most is walking through what must have been a part of an old curated area for visitors, where you could see the outlines of burnt-out benches and just the faint indications of signs, and there was still plastic debris intact. Bags and drinking cups were, if you dug, mashed up with the dirt and wet ashes on the ground. And the highlight of the whole scene was this large but faded and maybe singed, dirty sign of Smokey the Bear. And I remember being struck by the kind of irony of him after a forest fire. And the whole scene had kind of this post-apocalyptic nature to it, right? So it felt as if we had all been, through hiking, transported into some future, deep future time after our civilization had been wiped away. And it led me thinking, what would some future seed of humanity think about us now if they had to interpret us just through this little scene? It dawned on me that where we had hiked to, that this burnt-out area might stay intact for like hundreds of years. No one would come up there. There's no point of it. And so it could very well be that Smokey the Bear was our great contribution as a civilization to that landscape. Well, today, as I prepare to go, my next to last sermon here at the church, we have been reflecting on our own theology of this place, this spot. And after reflecting on the deep history and its recent past, today I want us to dwell, if we can, look into its mysterious future. Now, it doesn't seem very radical or controversial in 2018 for me to suggest that we are living in an age of chaos and maybe even collapse. No longer really something anyone wants. When I started my career, people were like, no, and now. I hate to be right. At the very least, this is an age of great transformation. All the things we took for granted are being upturned, and it's against that backdrop for us as a church community that we must now reinterpret and even reincarnate the timeless truths of our Christian tradition. That is our job as a church. Not just to repeat the scriptures, but to make meaning out of them in a new world. So, today's gospel reading is an apocalyptic text. It's Jesus himself describing in his view what the end of the world will look like. At least the end of the world as we know it. We know he's not just referring to the temple. Some people say that's all this really is talking about. We know it's not because his disciples specifically asked, what sign will signal your return and the end of the world? And surprise, surprise, Jesus does not give a straight answer. Instead, he sort of offers them a warning. He says, many will come in my name, and they will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but don't panic. All this is just the beginning of birth pains, and there is still much more to come. Now, this is really important, I think, for the text. Jesus says that the end of the world isn't really the end. The end of the world is really the birth of something else. But what does he mean? What are the other things that we are supposed to be born back into after the end of history? What does that look like? And what does it mean for life to continue on after that so-called end? Jesus says, you will be hated by all the world because you are my followers. And Many will turn away from me and betray and hate each other. Many false prophets will appear and will deceive many people. He says that sin will be rampant everywhere, and the love of many will grow cold. But the good news will be preached throughout the whole world. All the nations will hear it. And then the end will come. This text tells us that Jesus can see the future. It's one of his secret powers, and it's not the only time that Jesus wields this meta-human super ability. And we can't know exactly how this power works for him, what the mechanism is, but I think it seems reasonable to know that he did this. I think it's actually possibly true. We can all see, of course, every one of us humans with the power of our imagination, we can all see right now how the seeds of the future are buried into this present moment. Because we can see how what happens in this room today will set off a chain reaction for all of us. We'll go on talking about what Gary did. We'll talk about some chance interaction. And that will start off something. And for some of us, the future that moves out of this room will be really subtle. And for some of us, it might be, I don't know, really dramatic. Something leads to something leads to something. But like the butterfly that flaps its wings in the Jurassic era, only to alter history from the series of reactions set off by tiny little things, so all the actions of each of us in every moment is constantly molding and shaping an entire future cosmos in tiny little movements. This is the awesome and creative responsibility power that God gives each of us. And every word we make, every gesture, every little comment to each other before, during, and after church. And if our spiritual vision could see deeply enough, if we could see all the little threads set off by our actions and the worlds that they would go on to create on the loom of creation and imagination, maybe we too could see the future. Right here, implicit in the present. And maybe we would see how, as Psalm 82 and Jesus himself says, that we are gods of a kind. So it's super interesting to me. Because every generation that comes along since Jesus basically thinks we're the end. This is it. Nothing could be worse than this. And it's finally come, right? It always happens. And we might even think that we have some special claim on the apocalypse. I know that I do. After all, it's only recently, since the advent of globalism and mass telecommunications, that the gospel could be preached all over the world, right? Only now, and many other parts seem to speak to us from what Janine read today. There are false prophets preaching in Jesus' name. Some of you may think that I'm one of them. And maybe I am. The modern religions of hate and judgment and power praising, cast in Jesus' false image, represent the dominant association with the name Jesus on this planet. Even while I believe true disciples of Jesus' way of peace are trampled on all over this world, and likewise now today, sin is rampant. And more importantly, the love of many has grown cold. So, whether or not this is really the end, or, as I suspect, that the end is actually something that comes over and over and over again, like the cycles of birth and death, it is pertinent for us to ask, what is that other thing? able for our doxology. This service ends, that is where our real service begins, out in the world together. Let us close by singing For the Beauty of the Earth.